Since I'm on my...
Okay, I'm recording. I'll send you the link when you're done.
All right, thanks very much, sir. Okay, on the website Tubosun.com, we see linguist, writer, who is Kola Tubosun, sir?
I don't know. I'm just a young man doing what I can with the skills, the little skills I have. I graduated from UI and SIUE, both for linguistics. And so I can call myself a linguist because I have not just training in that, I have also done some work in that field. So I'm a linguist. Also, I've written a few books, and so I can also call myself a creative writer, mostly a poet. I've done 2 collections of poetry, and I've written a couple of essays in different other spaces. So other than that, I'm just a Yoruba boy, fourth child fifth out of 6 children. Second boy in a family of 6. So I'm now a father of 2 children.
Oh, thank God about that. So, when did you conceive this idea of adopting the Yoruba language to do the many wonders, if you will allow me to say that, that you have performed with the language? Especially in an age when many youth shy away. Anyway, you are not, I don't know if you qualify to be regarded as you. When many Nigerian youth will shy away from the language and the culture, how did you conceive the idea of going into, adopting the Yoruba language as a career, so to say?
So my career is not Yoruba. It's Yoruba is just something I'm competent in. I keep always saying this when people call me Yoruba linguist. Maybe yes, because I've done a lot of work in it that many people who are actually Yoruba linguists have not. People tend to ascribe me the name of Yoruba linguist. I reluctantly take it because yes, there's some justification for some of the work I've done that can give me that regard. But I'm a linguist and I'm a creative writer. Now, but what got me into writing into Yoruba, the projects and stuff I've done in Yoruba, I don't think it was conscious. I grew up in Ibadan, in Akobo, which is at the time we're growing up, we're kind of a remote part of Ibadan, not many people knew about it. But in the house, we spoke Yoruba. My parents spoke Yoruba to us. My father spoke Yoruba. My father, I guess, may have played a part in it because he's a broadcaster, he's a poet, he's written books in Yoruba. So he had a lot of books in the house, many of them Yoruba. Some of them were in English. A number of them were in English, actually, because he had Reader's Digest, collection of Reader's Digest, like plenty, hundreds of them. We had novels from, Harold Robbins. He had so many, Dennis Robbins and stuff like that. And we also had Shakespeare and all. But he was a Yoruba practitioner, so he produced records of Odolaya Remo, Okundare Fayomu, Alabi Ogundepo, Adebayo Faleti, and the rest of them. So most of these Yoruba cultural values were around me when I was growing up. But it wasn't forced on us. It wasn't anything. It was just that's how we grew up. But we went to private schools. I went to a private primary school, Ridge, nearby there in Akubo. And in school, we spoke English. But as soon as we leave school, we go back home, it's Yoruba. So I believe that the growing up with that environment where both languages and cultures, so to speak, if English language is considered Nigerian culture now, if both languages can be considered valid, equally valid, both of them, I had a chance of being able to imbibe both of them. So I went to school, learned English, went to home, spoke Yoruba. And there was this time my father came to school and we grew up, got up and said, "Good morning, sir." And he said, which made me really embarrassed at the time. But I knew he spoke English, and I didn't understand until later why I was embarrassed and why it was wrong for me to have felt that way, because he was just expressing his own pride, so to speak, in his language, and I wanted to just create the same impression. I mean, I'd noticed those kind of behavior in him a while. Sometimes people would speak English to him, he knew what they were saying, but he would respond in Yoruba because he knew they could understand in Yoruba. So I suspect that, got into me over time, and I grew up at some point I tried to write in Yoruba, but I was terrible at it, so I just stopped. Sometimes your father's influence just bears so hard on you that you want to try to ape and become like him. So I let that go, and then I grew up. I went to university. I applied first for theater arts, a diploma in theater arts, and then in JAMB I wrote communication arts and linguistics, and I was given linguistics. So it was when I got to university that I realized that linguistics was actually quite a very fascinating field. Many of my professors were from Edo. Professor Lugbe, Professor Buhari, Professor Latunji, a number of other people. So it was just kind of beautiful space where I actually got to appreciate what the role of language in society, the impact of the attitude we've imbibed over the years about language. People saying that English is the only language that they care about and stuff like that. But my professors, I think, gave me the value to appreciate the language I have, even though they were not Yoruba speakers. If you study linguistics for 1 or 2 years, you will realize that the language you have is equally as important in doing a number of things. So I think being in linguistics now made me conscious of language as a factor in society, as a means of doing a number of great things. And it also made me see a lot of gaps in how we have managed to use language in Nigerian society. So Yoruba just came handy. So when I got to final year, I was thinking of what project to do. Many of my mates were writing like long essays and syntax and all those kind of things. And I really, really didn't want to do any of those things because it was boring. So I was like, I have a book had just been published at the time called Dictionary of Yoruba Names, Personal Names by Obalola and Alaba, I believe. And I was like, okay, I had some skills in computer at the time as well. So I'm like, let me do a dictionary on a CD that will have 1,000 names from this dictionary that Obalola has made. And I add some of the other names of mine. And I will record each of these names with pronunciation in it. And I'll create a web dictionary. I think I'd used some Oxford Dictionary CDs at that time, and I just wanted to do something similar. So I convinced my professor to let me do that project, and it was fine. The only project at the department at the time that was just CD-based, no hard copy. So I think that was the first Yoruba project I did. And when I was doing my NYSC, I had a friend at the time who knew someone who had got a project to translate this T9, they called it. It was a predictive text thing. It started before phones started becoming sophisticated. It was just from 3310 phones. You can
not the QWERTY parts that we use now.
Not now. So that one was you have to type on your phone to write. So it predicts your words. So they were trying to localize it into Nigerian languages, and the guy was Igbo, and he wanted a Yoruba person to translate, and they're going to pay $400 or $500. I can't remember at the time. It was 2016. It was a lot of money. So they got me the job, and I did the translation. So they sent me all the English glossary items, and I translated. So at the time, I was like, this is good. I don't know that just the fact that I can speak Yoruba is able to give me this amount of money. It was the most money I've ever earned at the time. So I started paying more attention to translation as an industry, and I was getting a lot of jobs of different people doing translations. So I think that, and in combined with a number other things that I noticed. So, I mean, the project, of course, eventually became the yorubaname.com 10 years later. But I think the skills I've learned, the computer skills I've learned from childhood, and the gaps I saw in the way the tech world, which had now become big when I left university, was treating African languages, Yoruba in particular, made me even more committed to now doing something. So for instance, I couldn't type my name fully on Microsoft Word because you couldn't put the tone marks on top and under it. And that really always got me. I mean, at the beginning, we were like, it's one of those things. They don't care for Nigerian languages. But yes, from listening to my professors, I met Tunde Adegbola, and just observing even myself trying to do the work, the dictionary I mentioned, I realized that there was a problem. So as an adult, I just realized that maybe there's something I could do about it. And yeah, so combined with the knowledge I had and the space I thought existed in African language technology, I started being more conscious about what I did. And the more conscious I was, the more I saw the spaces and more other things I could do about it. And sometimes there was payment for it, sometimes there was not, but it was just interesting to me. And at the beginning, I was like, okay, maybe I could do this. I mean, it was just kind of fun things. I was just doing them for fun because it was fun, it was interesting. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that because of how I was brought up, I had begun to occupy a position where I was more competent than many of the people I knew I thought would be able to do them themselves. So I had grown up thinking, maybe I'm in linguistics. There will be tech people, let them do what they need to do. People need to do, solve these problems. But the more I grew up, the more I realized that actually there's nobody trying to do it. And I'm the only one who exists in this space who is both competent in Yoruba and competent in English and has some tech skills and understanding of this industry to be able to actually make an impact. So I started taking it more seriously. And so that's how I got to where I am, I guess. So it was kind of both accidental because I didn't plan it at the beginning, but also combined with the fact that I had the background. So kind of preparation meeting opportunity, I guess. And
yeah. Awesome. It's really nice to see that this is probably a career that was born out of experiments, so to say, if you permit me to say that. But then how the integration of language and the new media, when did you decide that it should turn into a full-fledged career for yourself? And I think having this I want to use this as a background. I want to believe the Nigerians who are also vast in the indigenous language, and some of them are in fact tech savvy, but they really do not know where to start and how to start. How did you go?
So again, like I said, there's a combination of a number of things. So when I finished so I did the undergraduate, I did the CD, that was that. Internet was not a big thing in 2005 when I left university. And if anybody had told me that I would eventually work at Google as a linguist, I would not have believed it because Google was just started in 2002, I believe, and they were just a search engine. But I left UI in 2005, went to serve, came back. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I wanted to do a master's degree, but I didn't want to go to UI. I was thinking about it. And then I got a Fulbright opportunity to go and teach Yoruba in the US. And I went in 2009. I taught for 1 year, came back, applied for master's, went back again and did my master's for 2 years and came back. So in 2012, when I came back, I still hadn't decided what I wanted. I mean, I had a master's in linguistics / teaching English as a second language. So I said, okay, let me go teach in a high school. In doing that, I was teaching English. I kind of then got even more interested in Nigerian English as an alternative to British English, because the syllabus of the high school was always British English. They taught you the diphthongs of the British speech, and they never cared about how Nigerians actually articulate English in their real life. So I did that for 3 years, and then an opportunity came for Google. I wanted to do a speech synthesis. Okay, before Google, I started Yoruba Name in 2015, which is 10 years after my university. What I wanted to do with that was the CD. I thought, these CDs I gave University of Ibadan, they probably have lost it, or the CDs technologies are getting obsolete. it's probably scratched and nobody can use it anymore. Let me put that project online and let more people be able to have access to it and be able to add more names to it. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought about how big Yoruba names actually are. And I said, okay, let me get all the names in Yoruba in one place online. Online is a vast space and you can put everything you want there. And then I realized, okay, I have to pronounce all the names. The last time, even to pronounce 1,000 names, I had to get some friends to help. How do I pronounce? Imagine we have 50,000 Yoruba names. How do I pronounce all of them? And then put it in one space. I will need money to do that. And again, I thought, okay, why, instead of getting someone to pronounce all the names, why can't I create a technological app that could pronounce the names? By then, there was already, the technology was already there. Siri existed, Google Home, and all these tech things that you can speak to and speak back to you. I'm like, we should be able to think of ways to make sure when you click on the name, the computer just knows what you need to do and it pronounces for you instead of having one person pronounce every one of them are recorded. So that was the dilemma. That was the challenge I gave myself. Like, I'm going to hack this thing. Yoruba language is a tonal language. It shouldn't be hard to like teach the computer how to arrange different syllables and put them together. But I didn't have the tech skills. So I mentioned that I had some skills in computer tuning, but they're very elementary. I know how the web works. I could design a website. I tried Python, but I couldn't go beyond a certain level. And the more sophisticated tech web things became, the more reluctant I was to actually go deeper into it. So I knew the principles and how they work, but I didn't know how to set up myself. But I knew that if I could get someone who did some work in, who knew how language and linguistics works, I could give them my idea and they could turn it into something. So what I did was, I sat down and I wrote down all the syllables that exist in Yoruba, all the possible syllables, and realized that if I could record all of them and put them in one folder, I could just tell somebody and teach them the rules of how syllables are combined to make sound. So I did, and thankfully it worked. And we didn't have to record more than just those finite diphones that are recorded. And then she wrote the Python rules and then created it. And then we use it for the Yoruba name dictionary. So that was this kind of speech synthesis. It's kind of elementary because we're dealing with individual syllables, but it was something that was able to solve the problem I was looking for, which is the pronunciation of names on my dictionary. And every new name I add now, I don't need to record anything else. The computer already knows the rules. It just, as long as the tone marks are there, it combines it, pronounces it. So it was that same year, later in the year, that Google was saying that they wanted a linguist to lead a team that was going to work on a Nigerian English voice, Google Voice. I was very excited, one, because I had already been interested in Nigerian English and how it sounds, and the fact that we're still teaching students in school British English style syllabus rather than Nigerian English. And also because I had done Yoruba speech synthesis and I had some idea about how it works. And I was interested in the challenge of having to sit with Google and see how they work with Nigerian English speech synthesis and create a new Nigerian English accent out of the computer. So I got the job, thankfully, and I went there. And even though I still don't know the technology, I mean, I understand how it works, but I'm not the one to set it up. My work was to work with the team and set up the parameters that the tech people will now work with, and then help they get the voiceover talent and all of that. So, I mean, I don't know if it answers your question, but it's a combination of work that I've done, and the little skills I had and the competency I had with Nigerian English in this case, and with Yoruba, with the Yoruba name dictionary. So for other people who might, I mean, now again, there are more sophisticated ways to do these things. Now Google, when I was at Google, I did work on a paper that specified how more languages can use the more modern ways to do speech synthesis. And before I left Google, I helped set up some Yoruba language recordings that hopefully Google can use in the future to create even more work. And since I've been out of Google, I've been working with a few other friends, many of who have more competence in tech stuff than I am, to also look at opportunities that we can to create even more work in Yoruba speech synthesis. So maybe you want to be able to read a book in Yoruba and the computer just listens to what you're saying, and you can transcribe what you're saying without you having to type it yourself. Or you want to send a voice note to someone or a text message, and you just open your phone and say, oh, what about Minibi Viola? And the computer just writes it out because they understand what you're saying, and then you can send the texts. These are many opportunities that still exist in speech technology for Nigerian languages, and we have not exploited even nearly 1/10 of the opportunities that are there. So because I'm one person, what I've been doing usually is become visible enough that people who have the skills that I don't have can contact me and say, I like the ideas you have, can we work on it together? And then we do work on it together. And that I think has been a very helpful way I've been able to get my work done, which is I bring the skills I have, they bring the skills they have, we work on it, we see what we can do.
All right, thanks very much, sir. And we have to agree with you that it's a matter of preparation, meeting providence. And I want to ask you, sir, yeah, you started experimentally, but after becoming conscious of what you are capable of doing, is the idea or the motivation now being driven by maybe some ideology, the idea, especially with your effort on translating some English text into Yoruba, is there any ideological reason behind this? Maybe sort of an attempt to decolonize, the world, like they say sometimes. So
yeah. Hold on 1 second. I want to see if I can get the book. Yes, you're right that as I grew up, many of the things I did, some of them just by fun and jokingly, or because I was just interested. I've become passionate, things that I've become more passionate about. So for instance, this book is a collection of poetry written originally in English, and then I translated it into Yoruba. And I did this because over time, I've tried to, like I said, I'm a creative writer as well. I've tried to apply for grants, for instance, to translate works into English. Sometimes I've seen grants of other people's successful grants applications that translate work in English. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that there are actually more grants, more opportunities to translate work from African languages into English, which is not so bad. But there were no grants at all to translate work from English into African languages. And as a literary person and a linguist, what I found as a consequence of that is that the bigger language, the language will become the targets of the translation is the one that benefits the most. So when Shoenka translated, what's it called?
The thousands of it, yes, Forest of a Thousand Demons.
Yeah, brilliant book. He had to invent a number of words, for instance, to be able to capture Fagua properly for the English reader. Lovely. If your first language is English, you would enjoy the book. It kind of takes you on a magical, imaginative journey. But English language benefited from it. There's a few words Shoenka had to invent to be able to express this. Many translations that happen every day do go through the same thing. The translator has to be inventive in thinking about how to bring their own knowledge and skill to making sure that the person who is reading it at the final end understands as much of the work as possible. In doing that, you enrich the language that the final reader is competent in. But who is looking out for the language where the work is coming from? So for many African languages, you have work being translated out of them, which is okay because we want more people to read them. But if the consequence of that is that the language, the people who originally owned the language don't have, if the language itself is not being enriched, because our local language literature industry has collapsed over the years, and we're just translating them out as a way of kind of saying, okay, this language is dead or dying. let's not worry about it anymore. Let's just get their literature and make sure that people can read it. Then I don't think it's not something I agree with. I think that there needs to be, as we're translating works out of it, there needs to be ways to make sure that the place we're translating out of is constantly also being enriched. And there are many ways to do that. One is to make sure that more people are writing in the language. That is a big issue that, an ambitious project that, takes a while to get to get to the way it needs to be. Industry is dead. We have to bring more people back there. We have to publish and do a number of things to make sure people can read and write in the language. We have to change the educational policy, make sure students can learn the language from the childhood. There's a number of steps that needs to be done. But while we're doing that, why can't we translate back into language? So when Emily, who wrote this book, contacted me that she was looking for an African language to publish the book in, I was very interested in making sure Yoruba is the language where the work was going to be in, because I had, again, been working in this space for a while. I had translated some short stories before. I did Chimamanda Adichie's The Children last 2 years ago or so. I had translated some of my father's work from English to Yoruba. Yoruba to English. I had also translated some other Ukamaka Olisakwe, Nigerian writer, to Yoruba, because I realized modern Nigerian literary scene is an English-based industry. And many Nigerian writers have assumed, I think we've just believed and surrendered to this idea that if a work, that we are an English language writing company. There used to be a debate about this in the 60s with Shoyinka Achebe, Ngugi, and the rest of them. But we seem to all have agreed that, okay, English language is the only medium of instruction. The literature we write in secondary school is literature in English, not just literature. And everybody writes in English. Chimamanda, Tejuko, Kamaka, Rotimi Opatunde, Chika Onigwe, everybody. So who is looking out for Nigerian languages again? So even Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart is not been published in Igbo in any significant way, I believe, because the writer wanted to do it himself and he couldn't do it before he died. So, I wanted to translate as many Nigerian language short stories as possible into Nigerian languages, Yoruba, the one I speak. So kind of the opposite of what Shoyinka did. Shoyinka wanted to make sure more foreign readers read Nigerian works. Brilliant. I think many of that has been done enough. There's a lot of work of ours that's been translated, which is great. I want to find the works that have been published now and the works that have been published before and translate them back into Nigerian languages to make sure Nigerians are able to read them, but also as a linguist to make sure that the language itself is enriched. And while I was working on this, I had to, for instance, the word snow, which many people had called I realized I'm not satisfied with that translation, and to satisfy my own craving, I had to work on it and realize what I wanted it to be. And the word eventually was irididi, which is the frozen mist. Which is what it is. And a number of other inventions I kind of did in that language. And in that way, I believe that I'm enriching Yoruba language. And I believe that if we can do more of that, while English literature is thriving, Yoruba language is also thriving. And so I don't know if that's ideological, but yeah, it's been one of those things that I've stumbled myself into while in this process of working in language and literature and linguistics.
I will really have to conclude that it is ideologically driven, actually. it might be subconscious anyway, because even the attempt to preserve the language in itself is some sort of ideology. But while answering my question, you got me a bit petrified about the notion that people always make grants available to translate works written in African languages into foreign languages. But that is not the case if you are to translate the foreign works into African languages, because, it's one of the opportunities I'm trying to look into. For somebody like Kola Tubosun, I think he has the luxury, he could, out of passion, translate some foreign work into indigenous languages. But for people like us who are very much interested in doing all of this, are you saying we shouldn't even consider it? Because while we are passionate to preserve and enrich African languages, there should also be some sort of motivation, material motivation, no matter how we look at it, so that we get little reward for whatever we are doing, no matter how little.
Well,
So,
yeah, literature I mean, now is a job, right? For me, literature, linguistics, all of this. I mean, children have to eat, right? So, when I proposed to translate my father's work, for instance, into English, I've done many of the work already, and I've done them in my leisure time, just writing them out and stuff. But to get it published is a different thing. Publishing is an industry. So if you don't have, say, a publisher offering to publish it for you, you have to then find your own or pay money to someone to do it. So, or take time off your own work to sit down and do the work. So I believe that writing should be supported, and writings have been supported. It's what I was pointing out was that it's lopsided, and that some kind of writing have been supported and some are not. If you're passionate about writing or translating, you will do it anyway, whether people pay you money or not. This work I did now, if I wasn't paid for it, I would have still done it, because I was interested. The fact that there was an opportunity to get it published was more motivating to me than the fact that I was getting paid for it. The other ones I've done that I've not published that all around my computer, they're there. So yeah, money will come, I guess, but I still believe that there should be institutions that put money down, that support work like this. If I have money, I intend to put some money. I think I've worked with Atelewo, who this guy is on Twitter.
RMG, Razak Malik Balang.
Yeah, Razak and Oredola and I can't remember the third guy's name. And I have supported them in my own way. I believe that, people who put effort into doing work like this should be supported. Organizations like Yoruba Academy, for instance, or any other Nigerian cultural organizations, not just Yoruba, either Igbo, Hausa, any language that we want to support that we think are worthy of being used in literature. I think people who care about those languages should want to put their money down and support those who want to work in this space. But Nigeria, every time people have money, they want to rather go to Owambe or throw it into politics or something like that. I would, I prefer that our elites put money in cultural things and support people who are doing work to enhance them.
Okay, sir. Let me ask this question because I'm very curious. For somebody like me who is really interested in Yoruba language and actually see how it could become a career prospect for me. But then I am looking at somebody like Kola Tubosun, having worked with Twitter, with Google, with the British Library and all of those. Sometimes I have the feeling that Paul has been exhausted in terms of respect in Yoruba. So,
I don't think I don't think so. Because I even find for myself, like I said, if you had told me when I finished university, even when I went to university, I had all these great people around me. Larry Akin O was in UI at the time, Olasunji Olatunji, all these professors. You get the impression that, everything has been done. What else do you need to do? They just need to follow them and do what. But you realize, I guess it worked because I just looked inwards and looked at what was I interested in. So I had learned some computer. I realized that I knew web design and I could create a dictionary. So that was the first thing. That was my passion, and that was just that. And 10 years later, I realized, okay, there's internet, I can create a web dictionary, and that was that. I'm sure there's plenty other opportunities that exist. The question you need to look into yourself, what are you passionate about? If you're passionate about it enough, and you put your energy in it enough, you will realize that there's a space there. There's always a space there. The world is big. There's so many things. When I think about how much more work needs to be done for you, actually I get exhausted because I'm like, Why am I still the only one talking about this? Why is there no ATM in Nigeria that you can use by speaking to it in Yoruba and say, and the machine says, you know, 500 naira, 1,000 naira, you know, and just talks to you and you reply back to it. It's doable. It's just technology. People just haven't put in idea and thought about it. Some ATMs now have Yoruba language options for you to read, but how many market women can actually read Yoruba? Even if it's in Yoruba, can they read? Unless the thing is speaking it to them, in which they can hear. So that's that. But that's just in technology. There are many other opportunities. Translation is there. Creative writing is there. Why don't we have another Fragma? Fragma was published in the 50s. There's no new creative writing in Yoruba. Why? I mean, people probably self-publish here and there, and most are university professors. But creativity is not limited to university professors. Somebody can sit down and just conceive of a story that's wild and beautiful and imaginative and can write it in Yoruba. You can get someone else to translate it. You can even publish both of them in translation and the original. So that's, I mean, it's possible that I can't conceive of all the possibilities that exist. And I would hate to believe that I have, as you know, I'm just 40 years old, but I have done everything that needs to be done. I don't think so. I really don't believe that. I think there's several opportunities that exist, that continues to exist until you explore it, until you put your mind into it, until you try, you won't know.
So, sir, does it really make any sense that somebody would just think they want to devote their own time and career to the translation of some maybe indigenous or literature written in English into Yoruba, or some foreign literatures into Yoruba? What do you think it is anything that anybody should
it's a viable
consider venturing into?
Yes, it's a viable idea. The problem with that, of course, is publishing. So I was on a panel 2 days ago, and I think it was yesterday, and we were talking about, you know, how much people want to put down to buy books. For instance, Nigerian authors, many of them sell more abroad than they sell inside. So I guess that is a big issue you have to think about. So if you translate work into Yoruba, for instance, you know that you're only writing for Yoruba people, and that Yoruba people are limited to like 30 million people. And how many of them want to put their money down to even buy the books? So there is that. So what we need to do, I guess, to solve that problem is to make sure that there's an industry. An industry includes, you know, an army of reviewers, people who review the book, booksellers that will stock it, university professors that will recommend it, and people who will talk about it, you know. But that we don't have. So part of what I'm doing, because I am visible, is to talk about these things and make sure that, you know, people who matter put it as part of their mind as something important they want to do. I'm able, for instance, maybe because I'm, again, probably I've done some work in that regard in the past, can decide tomorrow that I want to translate Chimamanda or Tejuko or somebody into Yoruba. If I don't have the grants to do it, somebody paid me to do it, it probably won't motivate me as much, except for, like, you know, something I want to do just because I'm passionate about it. But again, because you're making priority decisions every day about what to spend your time on, because you want to make money, you want to feed a family, you will not put that as number one thing in the back of your mind. But if I have somebody give me a grant to do it, I would likely do it. Again, why would they want to put money down if they're not sure it to sell? So that's also a factor they have to put in mind. So I guess it's a cyclical thing. We have to make sure the industry exists, but we can't wait on the industry before we do the work. So again, how do we balance it? I published my book now first, so I'm trying to market it and sell it to people everywhere, but I can't force them to. And if a professor in UI one day decides that he wants to recommend it as a book, then more people will buy it. And if they're successful, then more people say, oh, Kola has published a book and it's sold, so let me do the same thing. But of course, there's some people who will do it even before that time comes. They will take the loss and hope that their idea also catches on as soon as it. So it's a combination of both a passion and a business. I don't know what is the best way to go forward, but I'm sure opportunities exist.
Oh, okay. Well, that's really makes much sense. But then you were talking about your attempt to translate in the course of translating this particular text, that you had to, like, do some coinage yourself. Then it happens that most times when we try to do that, we have some language purists who tend to be, put off by such attempts. For instance, you have some time of day, some people would say afternoon. Some would say it is incorrect for you to say osan, but you should rather say yaleta around, around the midday or so. So how does this idea of language puritanism impact on the preservation of Yoruba language?
That's
Especially
a good question. That's a good question. And I like that you've asked it, because part of my interest in translating work and getting it published is actually to like kind of stick my finger in the eye of those who insist that language has to be written only in one particular way. So, for instance, when you write fun in Yoruba, the orthography that Bangboshi handed down to us say we should write it as FUN-UN. And I thought that was, I always thought that was kind of in what's the word for it now? It's not as pretty. I don't think it's unwieldy, I think. And I would rather write it as FUN and then put the mark on the first U. Nobody else writes like that. And I cannot get anybody else to write like that. I can only write like that if I want to. Now, if I was in a master's program or undergraduate program in Yoruba and I want to write an essay and I write like that, I'll probably fail, because the people who are the gatekeepers are right there marking my scripts, because they are not very open to creativity and the dimensions of, of trying new things, of wild experimentation. But in literature, I don't have that constraint. I can sit in my house and write a short story and decide I'm going to use the orthography I want, because it's creativity. The same way people can write in pidgin or people can write Sosa Boy, like Sarawiwa, was written in a different kind of language. What's his name? This guy, a Jamaican writer, would write in patois and he writes in his own way. Because literature gives you the chance, yes, literature gives you the chance to be creative. So in this case, there are many liberties I took as well in writing this book. And my intention of doing that is to say that language grows only when you let it. And the only way you can let it is to allow different ways of writing it and speaking it, of course. Language is evolving in speaking. For instance, the word jakpa, nobody uses it to mean travel until recently. Yapa, the Fuji musician will say yapa, and they're saying it's plenty. Where yapa that I used to know just means that something splits into two. So language is growing when we're speaking it, but when we're writing it, we're limiting ourselves to constraint. Like, you have to write it this way. I mean, not everybody wants to read a Yoruba that sounds like Ajaikra, the Bible. Li or Tula instead of Ni. Those things, exactly. Even the way they spell A with the I and all that. Many of those things, the people have to write like papers. Bangladesh had to write, academic papers to say, okay, orthography, let's evolve it, let's change this and that. That is a way of changing language. But how many people have to go to school to have to learn the new way of writing? So literature is a way where people are exposed to new things and they imbibe it without needing to go to a UI to study Yoruba to be able to learn that there's a new way of writing. And my hope is that if literature can surpass academia in getting people to adapt new ways of writing, then the change will be organic by itself. And the academic people then will have to catch up, because again, linguistics is looking at how people are using the language and then codifying it for writing. It's not always prescriptive, it can always also be descriptive. So I don't care about what the gatekeepers say. The English language grew to be where it is because people tried new ways of using it to write. Otherwise, everybody would still be reading Shakespeare, But every day new people write in different ways. And if the reader enjoys it, it tells you something, that the writer has done a good job in bending the rules that exist. And if they can get away with it, then why not? It's just language. It's just codes, you know. So it's up to us. And I believe, by the way, that many of the limits to your adoption of Yoruba by many young people come from this fear that there is always somebody looking over their shoulder. I'm afraid, I can't speak well, I can't write well. I just saw an ad today by John Boyega, about I think he's launching a new clothing line by H&M. And his 30 seconds ad, but the first 20 seconds he was speaking Yoruba. But Yoruba is not Yoruba I will speak. He's speaking London Yoruba because he doesn't speak as fluently. But he still spoke it, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's still benefiting the Yoruba language. There are people who sit in a corner in the university dusty rooms and say, if you don't speak exactly like I speak, with proverbs and with dodge and inflection and talking drum beating behind you, then you're not speaking. No. The language benefits from different ways of expressing it. The reason why children are able to master languages quickly is because they're not afraid of making mistakes. So let people write, let people read, let people do joyous experimentation in language in different ways. And it only leads to language growth and language expansion. Limiting us to saying we have to do it only this way, even though it has its own role in pedagogy and stuff like that, would only just exclude more people who would otherwise have been able to come into the language or help it spread forward. I hope I answered the question.
Oh, yes, of course you did. Now, I don't want to sound repetitive, but I think it's important I asked this question. For somebody who is interested in, tapping on from the many opportunities offered by Yoruba, like yourself, or somebody who is looking up to you as a role model, and they also want to do with languages, English, Yoruba, and some other indigenous languages, what you have done, or part of what you have done, or some of what can you, or which area can you recommend as the entry point for them? Can you, especially for somebody who is thinking of, who is considering something like translation, even though you have highlighted some other opportunities, but how do you think they can go about it? Do they?
Yeah, let me see. Because like in my case, for instance, my competence in Yoruba comes from like growing up in Ibadan and growing up in the family I grew up in and the environment. I don't think I can't replicate that for anyone else. It has to have they have to have something in them already they have, and then build on it. But if you want to work in tech, for instance, if there are people who have knowledge of tech or Python or full stack, whatever they call it, I don't know those technologies, but they have that, but they also have a knowledge of or a desire to do more work in languages. What they can do is find other people who have the skills they don't have, like I mentioned earlier. So the Igbo name, for instance, we're trying to do it in the Igbo name.com site, just like Yoruba name, but for Igbo. I'm a part of that, and I don't speak Igbo. And what I am able to bring in is my knowledge of lexicography, which is dictionary design. I can say from my experience, it's good that the dictionary will have the meaning of names, the pronunciation, the geolocation where in Igbo land is name spoken, maybe the morphology breakdown, etc., etc. When we started the Igbo name, for instance, I set up a group and I put a few people there, male and female, and said, while we're designing the site, kind of come up with ideas about what you think the dictionary should look like. And then this is an Excel sheet, start putting the names you come up with in there. And in a few days, a fight started because the men there said they want the dictionary to have male and female designation beside each name. And one of the females who was there, Sugar Belly, said, no, Igbo names don't have gender. You don't have to tag them. There are names that are given to women over the years because people like them on women. Names are given to men because people like them on men. But the names themselves are just names. Sometimes the circumstance might decide that this name belongs to a woman, but circumstance might decide this name belongs to a man. And that's the same with Yoruba, I think, in most cases, except maybe Yetunde or Yewande. Most of the other names, you can put them on anybody. I've seen a woman bear Kola before. I was shocked, but then I realized, why am I shocked? It's just a name. A woman can call her, there's nothing wrong with that. But the men disagreed. They strongly fought and said, no, how can you have Ike for a woman? And Ike means strength. And they were like, okay, so can women have strength? And they said, no, it's an abomination anyway. They fought and the group scattered. So my work there was just to kind of provide a balance, but because I guess they would look at me and say, this is a Yoruba guy, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I set up a new group anyway, and things are much better now. But like I said, I don't need to be able to know that it's possible for names not to have gender. So that's the skill I have. Other people have their own different skills. So if you can form a group of people with different diverse skills, you can do anything. And I'm still here as well. Sometimes people write me and say, I like what you're doing, but I say Lingala or whatever community I come from, and the language is this and that, and I want to help. I say, yeah, fine. Our tools are open source. All the code for our dictionary are available for free. I can guide you as to maybe how to start collating names or how to set up a dictionary. And we can give you the codes for you to go and find someone to help you design. So much of what we're doing is we're not hoarding them and keeping them to ourselves. There's plenty of opportunities. So either you collaborate with maybe people like me, our organization, Yoruba Name, or find other people you can collaborate with. Opportunities. Now, there are many opportunities, like I said earlier, that I may not even have thought of at the moment, but somebody has an idea and think, let me suggest it. Maybe it's something we can work on together. Sure.
Oh, I appreciate your response, sir. But I think you've said, in fact, you answered the question perfectly well. But I must add that this is exactly what I'm saying. Like you said, for anybody to consider this kind of idea, you must have something within you, just like yourself. It wasn't as if you had to start learning Yoruba language or how to use the Yoruba lexicography or all of those when you started the stuff. But then, like myself, I was wondering, before I saw in fact, incidentally, I saw your last translation. I think I saw it on a Telework platform or so, maybe on the website, or maybe on your own website. So I saw it there and I was thinking, oh, is this really possible? Because my idea, I have been nurturing this idea, but I don't really know which would be reasonable, which would appeal to people's interest the more. Is it to translate some selected, classics, so to say, in English into Yoruba, or some selected Yoruba, indigenous African literary classics into Yoruba language, like Things Fall Apart and all of those. But we cannot start from there. You don't take it from the apex. So one has to start from there. So my decision is perhaps I should start translating some very popular poems, which I already started, I think 2 days ago or so. Some of them I'll still send to you. And I translated Shakespeare's Oh Mistress My, a song in Twelfth Night, Oh Mistress My. And I'm considering translating Water Rally, Source Errand, and all of those. But like you said, that was the reason I asked about the question of being language, Puritanism, all of those. At a point in time, I was translating the poem, and I realized that I needed some words to capture the carpe diem thematic preoccupation of the poem, and which, if I use the readily available Yoruba lexicons, they might not capture the mood. So I was now contemplating, if I decided to go the way I want it to be, would I not, be dragged to the purgatory by by the language purist? Is this some of the things we should also consider when we are doing some of these things? Do you think?
Yeah, this is why this industry is helpful. So, like a community of people, it's not just you in an isolation. Atelewo is building a community. So, where you have people who can critique and argue. I mean, nobody knows everything. Nobody knows it all. In the 60s, the people who call literary giants, they had themselves. And they had huge, fierce debates about different things, about the role of English, about this and that, about how to use. And I think these are helpful in even building your own confidence as well as your own craft. So you can write in a certain way and you think, oh, maybe people are going to drag me, but let them drag you first and see what they say. And you have your mouth too. You can also respond and challenge and debate what you have written. So when I was translating this book, there's this line that the writer wrote. I think it was called Black Bituminous Eyes. And bitumen, of course, you know how black bitumen is, which is was describing. And I was going to translate that, and I realized I'm not going to stress myself translating this any other way, but I'm going to say Ojuto Dudu Bi Koroishi. Koroishi is already, when you see describe it as black as Koroishi, everybody knows what it is. Yes, I don't need to bring in the idea of bitumen into Yoruba because we already have an idea of blackness that I can get. So it's part of the creativity. And as soon as I made that decision, I was calm in my heart, like, this is brilliant. And many people who read it, I read one of the reviews. And one of the things he mentioned was that he actually liked the fact that I was able to get an alternative in the Yoruba instead of, but I don't succeed all the time. There are many parts of it where I also struggle to relate some things. I was talking about rose petals, rosy, to do rose. And I wasn't as satisfied by that, but at least that's what I realized was at least the best option to translate into. So you will find challenges, you will find parts of it that make you happy, part of it that makes you frustrated. It's the whole part of the process. It's up to you to be confident that what you've done is the best thing you could have done, and let the reviewers say whatever they want. If it's something you think their words, concern you, then you respond. If it doesn't concern you and you think, yeah, they're just saying their own because they can't do it, then you let go. But the fact that you're doing it is more important than getting it absolutely 100% right all the time.
This is really nice, honestly, because there are some words. I think I can remember a line like youth is a thing will not endure in the line. And I was trying to if I have to I understand what Shakespeare is trying to say is that time does not wait for so long. But if I have to translate it literally, it is going to lose that original intent of seize the moment. So I had to look for another word that will capture. I think this is where debate comes in, which is, so that's exactly what I'm talking about. And hopefully, maybe in days to come, I will send some of them to you so that you can critique and look at them when you have the time. And I must say, sir, all right.
Yeah, go on.
I must say, sir, that I also, I think I published my review, the review of Rasak Bolaon's, what's the name? That you wrote the forward.
Okay. Is it a recent one?
Yes, the recent one. So I wrote, the review was published on Nolongo, and you sent me some dollars.
Oh, okay. I do these things once every month, every week, so I don't remember everybody's name.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So it's inevitable. So you cannot.
I'm glad we got your work published. That's good.
Yeah, so I am going to do all of. I want to invest my time, starting with the translation of some poems, perhaps English poems, African poems written in English. Then I can send some of them to you so that you look at them. So maybe that could be
I don't want to promise that you can send me everything because I have plenty
Oh, that's why I'm saying some.
I'll look at the ones I can look at.
Yes, I can send some of them to you. Then I will send some to the other platforms, and let's see what comes from there. So it's really been nice talking to you, sir. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. I'm glad we are able to do this instead of having up a longer further time.
In fact, that is why it's a bit disorganized. If you
it's
allow
fine.
me,
it's okay. I impromptu things
because
are
I was thinking I was going to like when you said you were ready now, it would be unreasonable for me to say excuse me, give me some time, because so I just thought let's just
this the day.
Yorùbá dẹ̀ ni wọ́n ní àkírí ṣé erin náà sọ ní àbẹ́fọ̀n àìrẹ́fọ̀n tálẹ́bìjì.
Exactly. Because usually this is like 2:30 a.m. now. Sometimes in the night is the only time I have for myself. I have children, so during the day they're always stressing me out. So when it's night, I come out, I just sit in my office and get work done. I was already trying to get some work done. And he said, okay, let's get this done. Because if I have to set up time, I realize I will not get all my attention. So I'm glad you took the time.
Thanks very much, sir. I appreciate it.
No problem. I'll send you the link to it.
All right, sir. Do have a wonderful night, and extend my greetings to the family, sir.
Enjoy Ohio and stay
safe. In fact, it's already morning, not night again.
Right.
Over there.
Yes, exactly.
All right.
All right. Okay.